Mary had a little man. The fourth, we believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Thank you for putting your trust in our team for another 4 years. Thank you for saying we need to keep moving forward on our shared journey to a stronger and fairer New Jersey. In New Jersey, we know how to make forward work from the middle out and the bottom up. And we know how to move forward and accomplish big things. We are a national leader in raising the minimum wage.
Okay.
In making millionaires pay their fair share to give working families and the middle class a break. In education with the #1 public school system in America. In defending women's health and funding Planned Parenthood. In protecting the Affordable Care Act to make health care overall more affordable. In making child care more available and more affordable. In making a college education more affordable. In expanding paid family leave and pre-K, unlike any other state in America. In securing our democracy by expanding voting rights. In proudly being the quintessential pro-union state in the United States of America. In creating a clean energy economy with good jobs. We lead in common sense gun safety. And in recovering from the awful scourge of COVID by following science. And in rebuilding from COVID by bringing people together and helping small businesses get back on their feet. And by always remembering every single soul taken by this pandemic. If you want to know what the future looks like, folks, come to New Jersey.
Phil Murphy, everybody, Phil Murphy. Let's all move to New Jersey. So, just a little brief update. Phil Murphy prevailed in the election, the gubernatorial election in New Jersey last night. They announced that he did win, and Terry McAuliffe still lost Virginia. So what do we have here that we could look at? Well, we could look at Terry McAuliffe, the centrist DLCer, the centrist corporate Democrat who ran a really crappy campaign in Virginia versus the progressive Phil Murphy in New Jersey who prevailed. And now we know that the reason why there was a delay in calling the election was twofold. One, it was close, closer than anybody expected. Two, because New Jersey was not allowed to count the mail-in ballots until Election Day. Some states are allowed to count, like Virginia, you can count the mail-in ballots before Election Day. You can count them as they come in. New Jersey, no, you can't count until Election Day, and so that was a delay. Okay, so if policy matters, and Phil Murphy won based on progressive policy, why aren't we doing that? And why are we blaming progressives for the centrists' loss in Virginia? Why are we doing that? See, that makes no sense to me. I'm just saying it's just something nonsensical. It's just something I cannot compute. It's something that I can't hold the thought in my head that the progressive in a close race in New Jersey with progressive policies that benefit more New Jerseyans than anything that we've seen come down the pike in any other place, won, and the centrist DLCer, the third way guy, the guy who took it for granted, the guy who was lackadaisical, the guy who allowed for the culture wars to be played without answering those culture wars with anything meaningful, lost. and we're going to blame the progressives? Really? I don't know. It's very confusing. So New Jersey raised their minimum wage. They're on track to get to $15. They're at 12 now. Okay, they've taxed the wealthiest residents of New Jersey to help create the #1 public school system in the country. And his challenger, a guy that nobody ever heard of but had an R after his name, started to attack Phil Murphy on critical race theory, which isn't taught in New Jersey schools or in any schools in the United States of America. Okay. So they have the #1 school system in the country, but this guy came along and started with the culture war thing, with the Southern strategy thing, with the, hey, they're teaching your children racism thing, which is a false piece of information that he campaigned on all over New Jersey, came really close. All right. So the lessons are mounting up. The lessons we should learn from these 2 off-year elections statewide in 2 blue states. The lessons are piling up. And the lessons that I hope everyone learns is that centrists are so last century. They're so 90s. Centrists, the DLC, the blue dog democratic way of governing, the triangulation thing is so 90s. It's really over. People are hip to it. They don't like it. They've rejected it. And I think there's only maybe 6 or 9 blue dogs left in the entire Democratic caucus in the House, whereas there are 96 progressive members of the progressive caucus in the House. So you tell me who's winning elections and based on what? That would be one thing to learn. The other thing to learn is sometimes great policy isn't going to matter. And in what time will great policy not even matter? Answer: when racists play the race card in an election. Okay? That should be a lesson learned. That if you are competing against a guy with absolutely no character, no scruples, no morals, and is willing to lie about the need for a ban on something that isn't happening, right? You need to ban something that isn't even happening. Then we need to come out and say, that isn't even happening. Why do we have to ban it? Okay? And we have to say it over and over and over. And we have to stress that progressive policies are good for people. They're good for states. New Jersey expanded child care access. They expanded pre-K. They expanded paid family and medical leave. They expanded voting opportunities. They expanded Planned Parenthood funding. They are the most pro-union state in the nation, and they were able to beat back COVID. Now, the COVID thing created an opening. The COVID pandemic created a terrible situation for parents, for moms especially, and single dads and parents, families that work with 2 working members of the family. It created a problem with childcare. It created a problem with kids not being in school. It created a problem with, having to homeschool kids. It created all kinds of problems. And the Republican Party, instead of solving that problem, instead of attacking that problem, instead of admitting that the childcare deficit in this country was part of and a huge part of the problem for people who wanted to go back to work but couldn't go back to work because their kids weren't able to go to school. Instead of fixing that problem, they exploited that problem. They exploited that problem, and they told parents, not only are schools failing your children because they're closed, but schools are teaching a radical racist theory of absolute guilt for white people and putting kids in buckets and making them feel and it's a lie. It's a disgraceful GD lie is what it is. Okay? So I hope everybody learned. I hope everybody understands that progressive policies will save you in the end. Centrists are very 90s, and they are nowhere, and nobody likes them, and they can't defend anything because they haven't done anything, and they will lose. They will lose. And that we're not to worry about them losing. We're not to worry about centrists anymore, okay? We're supposed to try and get progressives elected because people like progressive policies. They just do. Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to randyrhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.